Of the spies you cover in the book, who do you think was the most damaging to the U.S.?
I would say the atomic bomb spies, the ones who spy for the Russians and got the secrets of the Manhattan Project. That was the most closely guarded United States government secret at that time. And it also, of course, changed modern warfare, and it ended the Second World War. But I would add there, I think those spies were damaging because, for example, I think some historians believe that Joseph Stalin felt emboldened once he got the bomb, and that they speculate that one of the reasons why he decided to support the Korean invasion of the South was because he felt this confidence that he got now that he had leveled the playing field with the United States. And that resulted in about 4 million casualties throughout Korea, plus 30,000 American soldiers who died. So if that's not damaging, I really don't know what is.
And then for those readers who maybe aren't quite as familiar, though, with the Manhattan Project spies, could you tell us a little bit more about how they were found out and how they had gathered those secrets?
The names that I think most people probably are aware of are Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, but they were really only one of a number of spies inside the project. There was Ted Hall, who was truly a whiz kid who just went through high school and college very quickly, was brilliant, and he played a much more direct role in the Manhattan Project. The Rosenbergs actually, Julius recruited his brother-in-law, David Greenglass, who was working in the project as a mechanic, but his information really was not of the level that Ted Hall provided, or a British scientist who worked in the project, Klaus Fuchs. But cumulatively, all that those spies provided really gave the Russians the entire picture of the bomb. Now, most of them were revealed by a project known as Venona. It was a very top secret project at the time, where the United States government basically took communications that were made over landlines from Soviet installations in the United States and started to try to decrypt them, if you will. And one of the first decryptions made actually pointed to spies inside the Manhattan Project. They were decrypting information that was sometimes 3 or 4 years old. But eventually they were able to decrypt it, they were able to put the pieces together with the assistance of the FBI and reveal who these people were. But those secrets, the Venona Project actually was not declassified, if you will, until 1997. So in many respects, they couldn't prosecute some of those spies, even though they knew who they were, because they didn't want to reveal that secret in court and, of course, lose that capability.
And so is that why the Rosenbergs were punished so much more heavily than the other spies? Or by being executed, or?
I think there were a number of reasons that why the Rosenbergs were executed. You know, the dynamics of the times have changed a little bit. There were a number of spies who worked for the Soviets in the 1930s and 40s who were revealed. But when the Rosenbergs were finally arrested and tried, the Cold War really was already launched on its way. The Soviets were no longer our allies. You know, they had developed a bomb of their own. Americans were building, bomb shelters. And it was kind of the early days of the Cold War. NATO had just been formed. Invasion of South Korea, the Korean War. So I think, in a sense, that's why the Rosenbergs were, and of course it was the most closely guarded secret, and about a weapon that, of course, made us, clearly the most powerful country in the world at that time. So in a sense, they were. That's why I think they got heavy sentences. There's some debate still today. For years, there are many people who said the Rosenbergs were innocent and they were unjustly tried and executed. And of course, this Venona secrets did reveal that Julius Rosenberg, in fact, was getting these secrets, did recruit his brother-in-law, David Greenglass. The reason they could try him was because when Greenglass was finally confronted, he agreed to testify. So the government didn't have to rely on these secrets in court. Now they had a witness who was willing to testify against the Rosenbergs. But there's still debate today about Ethel Rosenberg. How much was she really involved? She certainly knew what her husband was doing. She wasn't a avowed communist. Um, there were some who said, her brother-in-law David said that she typed up the notes that he gave. David Greenglass had later recanted that. So a lot of questions on whether, how guilty was Ethel Rosenberg, or did she deserve the death sentence? But he say that about Julius too. There were some spies after them during the Cold War, like John Walker, who worked in the Navy, who gave away, in a sense, all the naval communications that would have really hurt us during wartime. He got life imprisonment, didn't get the death sentence, but the times had changed by then. So the question of Ethel is one that people still debate. Even J. Edgar Hoover, who was as communist or anti-communist as one could be, actually didn't like the idea of the death sentence for Ethel, because he said the idea of leaving their two sons orphaned is actually going to create an image that will make it harder for us to fight communism in the future.
And so, what about Ted Hall?
Ted Hall was, I guess, lucky in a sense that these Venona transcripts, if you will, these decryptions of the messages, often didn't have the person's real name in there, or something that the FBI had to try to pin down who they were based on the information there. By the time they did realize who Ted Hall was, he was kind of out of reach. He was aged. He had long retired from the spy business. They really couldn't catch him, in the act, because he had quit essentially. So he was one of the ones, the unpunished spies, if you will. Klaus Fuchs, who was a British scientist, was tried and sentenced, I believe, to 14 years in prison. Many people later then complained and said, why is Julius Rosenberg getting the death sentence when Klaus Fuchs, who had much more access into the project, only get 14? Fuchs, after his sentence, he went on to live in East Germany and worked in the East German Academy of Sciences.